Thank you, James. Thank you, Grolier. Thank you all for being here. It's a particular pleasure to be introducing tonight's poets, all of whom are personal friends whose work I've known sometime very well. Though this is the usual Grolier practice, I'm going to introduce each poet before she reads. So our first poet is Teresa Cader, whom I got to know here in Cambridge in poetry workshops. First workshop I ever participated in, and later the one that included our next reader and lasted for several years. Teresa became a good friend, as did her poems. It's been a pleasure to follow her from the publication of the first book through her most recent one, which we're celebrating tonight. The first book, which won both the Ohio State Journal Book Award and the Norma Barber First Book Award, explores not only Teresa's own experience, but also her heritage as the descendant of Polish immigrants. Her second, The Paper Wasp, and her third, The History of Hurricanes, expand the territory in terms of both aesthetics, as she makes new and surprising uses of form and syntax, and content, as the facts that only research can produce increasingly weave their way into the lyric fabric of the poems. In her fourth book, At Risk, selected by Mark Doty as the winner of the Richard Snyder Memorial Prize and published just this fall, Teresa extends her reach again. In a long sequence, she returns to the Polish heritage that informed her first book, but now with deepened knowledge, awareness, experience, and poetic beauty. Elsewhere, she bravely addresses our increasingly frightening news and our fearful responses to it. We are, as the title suggests, at risk, as well as local history, lived experience, astute observation, and gleaned knowledge. Adroitly, she often uses collage to combine these elements in emotionally and aesthetically complex ways. Here is Kevin Proofer on this book. Teresa Cader is a truly ambitious poet whose eye may be toward the past, but whose sensibilities and concerns have everything to do with our collective present. Smart, witty, and ambitious. At Risk is a real marvel. Please welcome Teresa Cader.
I just tripped over that.
It's the Grolier dance.
And you didn't see me? So I'm sitting in the basement.
Go back first. It's okay.
Yeah, can you hear me? Doesn't sound like it's on. It's on?
Should be a little close to you now.
I think it's, yeah. That better?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thanks so much, Martha and James and Grolier and all of you who are here tonight and those of you who are watching at a distance. And yes, I'm reading from At Risk, and I'll read one new poem. And yeah, it's interesting that I wrote this book was in the works for a long time before this past election. And some of these poems are kind of prescient in that, unfortunately. So the first poem is entitled Thoughts and Prayers. Sometimes when the news pours into the kitchen, chairs sway like circus elephants, live shooter in an elementary school. I go under my tent that collapses into darkness, half smothering the children inside me. To save them, I hold my chair to the floor, my feet to the ground, and say, I'll keep you safe. I turn off the news, open the tent flap, see a woman walking a miniature poodle, teens jogging in blue shorts. Slowly, the children crawl toward the light, my green eyes where theirs should be. I am the mother who can't lift the car, not the one who defied the odds. I play jazz on the radio, make soup, try to erase them, ease them back into their sunny play, where the sweet island of my kitchen could make the dead bodies not our own, wrong as that might be. The next poem is entitled The Battle of Monotony. And Monotony was the name for Arlington historically. And we lived in Lexington for a long time, and I never heard about the Battle of Monotony, but it was actually the most important battle of the day when Lexington and Concord fought. It was the bloodiest battle, and it happened when the Brits were retreating from Lexington and Concord. And the militia had been called out from all the towns by then. And so there was really quite an attack, and the Brits came down Mass Ave, burning houses and barns and livestock. The Battle of Monotony. We live in Arlington now. The Battle of Monotony. When I saunter to the mailbox in miserable sun, a woman stares at the stone marker by my fence. Site of the house of John Cutter, set on fire during the British retreat of April 19th, 1775. Dogs piss on it. A traffic box cautions walkers at the crosswalk. Wait, wait, wait. Ambushed by 4,000 militia, the Brits torched houses and barns during the day's bloodiest fight. Royal bayonets gutting Jason and his friends at the Jason Russell House across the street. In third grade, I fell in love with glossy books about the founding fathers, the women in bonnets turning butter in barrels, that righteous hunger. What did I know of myths and facts? The Russells and their kind owned servants, some diaries say. Now our town fights over low-income housing. Jazz on the Russell House lawn, pop-up beer gardens and tents, the annual battle reenactments. Nearby, in the old burying ground, unmarked graves of redcoats and the enslaved. Where is Kate, owned by the Russells? Rose and Venus by the Cutlers. Underground radar might locate bones the way it finds water and sewer pipes. Black soldiers battled here. Ishmael, Cato, Cuff. I open the hot mailbox to my gas bill, Viking travel, and the ACLU wanting my vote. A fall leaf drops. So it's so odd to think. I mean, these are facts, and facts aren't popular. So somebody would erase this poem if it were print, if it were somewhere public. The next poem is entitled Sea Otters, Missiles, Sardines, and it takes place in Monterey Bay in March of 2022. My daughter was going to graduate school out there. And it was the time of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which had started in February of 2022. And I guess so I was getting the news on my phone and seeing footage on my phone of what was happening in Ukraine. And I should note that my father was born in a Polish village near the Czech border and spent World War I there with my grandmother. My grandfather was already in the US. And I guess I should say that I knew are the indigenous people of Japan. So sea otters, missiles, sardines. Monterey Bay, March 2022. Sea otters sun themselves on harbor rocks, then dive for mussels, lunch on their backs near kayaks, while sails snap, a houseboat pivots, gulls shriek. On my iPhone, patrols forage in rubble after a missile explodes in the city whose name sticks on my tongue, the way Bushkowice once did, my father's Polish village, where Nazi artillery hit our family house, missed the porch where he played in the war to end all wars. In canneries here in 1916, at all hours of the night, immigrant men unloaded nets of sardines and women sorted them, standing for 12 hours in frigid, bloody water, feeding Europe's craze for those silver synchronized swimmers, eaten with mustard or tomatoes and white onions, named for the prize fish of 15th century Sardinia. A swimmer floats near seals pulled by the current, no wetsuit, and the sun glazes the cold, white-capped waves. Two sea otters hold paws in the shallows, splash. Playful as Max, Steinbeck's dog, who ate a draft of East of Eden. He called the canneries a poem, a stink, a grating noise. Unlike the pitch drop music my daughter makes, reading to me in Japanese. She says an Ainu myth blames human imperfection on a sea otter who went fishing instead of finishing God's work. The next poem is entitled The Second Time. And the first people in Auschwitz were political prisoners. And my family village is about an hour from Auschwitz. And so they were political dissidents, Nazi resistors, and left-wing people. And there were socialists in the village and whatever. My cousin was a left-wing organizer for workers' rights. And that movement for workers' rights, I think, finally culminated in Solidarity, the first workers' union in the Soviet Empire. So this is from my cousin Jan Gluza. You dragged your right foot round as a melon, clawed an ash tree, fell, then hauled your swollen body back to the dirt road, drooled and spat and coughed so hard you could be heard in farmhouses by the river. You were EH23662, leftist troublemaker. After 56 days of re-education and torture in Auschwitz, freed. A hilltop shimmered in your delirium. A Galician sturgeon parted your hair with its fin. Your love bathed in your eyes until she rose from the tub like an alabaster figurine on the sea. The workers' track you printed sprouted blue wings. Some star must have led you home, some burgeoning path of cow dung or notes left by friends. 1 kilometer, find water and bread in box behind fence. Bloated like a seal, weak as a milkweed stalk, feverish, cosseted by family, medicated, urged to escape. You would have none of it. You went back to your press, and the Gestapo came for you, all spit polished and sure. The next poem is about Bruno Schulz. I don't know if many people, so I see some heads nodding. Bruno Schulz was a terrific Polish Jewish writer and artist. And well, yes, you'll find out what happens to him. It's travesty. The poem is in his voice, talking to us in the present. So he's commenting on our present day situation in America. And there are quotes here from Amos Oz, Israeli, important Israeli fiction writer. And when I read those quotes, if I remember, I'll put my finger up. And also, there's a mention of Bennu, which is an asteroid that people speculated might hit the Earth. This is called Bruno Schulz from the Bardo. Heat, filthy, gut-sick heat in my city's cobblestone streets. I hear Benno aims to split a continent or two. What kind of God does that? It looks like a saltwater wedge has surged into the dry Mississippi, could poison tap water. Amos Oz, the kind of man I could have been, a run-on sentence asserting itself. Elon Musk, beaten by his father for being beaten by his friends, loves Mars. A baguette. How absurd that I died carrying oblong bread, fragrant with yeast. My Nazi owner fought with his friend. Each shot the other's personal Jew. I died in the streets many times before and after that. What political cant does for the lonely? The mob's chant warms your ear. Oz wanted to grow up to be a book, not a writer. If I had been a book. It's frankly tiresome to watch my life story repeat and unoriginal. On Mars, assuming there aren't already Martians, will my dying finally end? How brilliant. Plans to outwit Bennu while we let the glaciers melt. Beginning to tell a story is like making a pass at a total stranger at a restaurant. My short stories are more like poems, some say. A poem is like a one-night stand. I see my Polish cities now in Ukraine, invaded by the latest hordes. Elon, I have no faith in Mars. Maybe in a book, not the author. That mural I painted on the Nazis' wall, an ocean voyage set in a desert. It's a short poem titled The Cycle. A voice rose from the rhododendron outside my window where grackles sleep. You must stop thinking so much. Catfish sailed on silver threads above my head. Alarm, rang the alarm. I snoozed. A catfish caught by a cat, sizzled up in a fry pan loaded with salt. I snoozed again. I was the cat who hunted the catfish, lugged it home in my jaws so I could eat it. I was the catfish in the cat's teeth, bumped along, then dumped on the ground, praying, eyes open. The chef? That was me too, chopping off the catfish head, happy with my slaughter. I'm going to read two more poems. And this one is called Guzzle of the Goats. And it involves Chess McCartney, who was a kind of famous, I guess, itinerant preacher who went around the country. I think he made it to 50 states with a herd of goats. And he married a knife thrower. And I don't think I need to say anything else. Okay, Guzzle of the Goats. Not the lyric song of shepherds. My love bleats ungodly tunes in private. My unlovely Irish tongue, Polish doom. A marriage made for goats to butt heads by day, by night, love. Goatman Chess McCartney wed a Spanish knife thrower, his near miss lethal lover. In my act, you don't flinch, duck, scrape, or bow. It appears you're an idiot for love. Chess took to the road with a herd of goats, a two-legged one who hopped. Now that's love. Dressed in goat skins, Caruso and the good book in tow, he preached smelly riffs on God's love. I preach too, you say, once would be enough. Finnegan wakes in my blood. My love, Thor's chariot was pulled by two Norse goats he ate each night. He saved the bones, by love, restored them whole each day, as I do you. Teresa means harvest, my love. I'm going to conclude with a new poem. And it's from my granddaughter, Sylvie, who was born recently. From the forest. One, in shades of gray, in white, in charcoal shows your closed eyes. Two, across the sea on a mountain path, from a southern tumbleweed field in hot sun, beside a bog yellow with butterflies. Three, deep the centuries, the unwritten words, the fire in hearths, soup, horses charging across moonlight. Four, your eyes pixel present, shrouded, catching the dim light. Five, once the grandfather of your grandmother's grandfather held you on his lap with such tenderness. Six, once a silk-threaded wool blanket knit by the great aunt of your grandmother's mother cushioned you in a handmade cradle. Seven, their song in bleak midwinter, the hopes and fears of all the years. Eight, soon you will see the blurred world and it will hurt, the light so bright. Nine, to the ancient text, your name will be added. The ages will welcome you in the common language of awe, and your fists will open. Thank you.
Pam Alexander, as I met Teresa Cader in a poetry workshop decades ago when she was living in Cambridge and teaching at MIT. Another member of, oh, just a minute. She soon became not only a poet whose work I loved, but also the poet whose responses to my own work mattered the most. Later, we formed a more lasting workshop, of which Teresa Cader was also a member, and also Mary Campbell was here. And after that, we shared a position at Oberlin College for 10 years. During those years, we were co-directors of the creative writing program, editors of Field magazine, as well as each other's best and for a time only readers of each other's work. The poems would not be what they are without Pam or without her poems. Pam's first book, Navigable Waterways, was chosen by James Merrill as the winner of the prestigious Yale Younger Poets Prize. It was followed by Commonwealth of Wings, based on the life of John James. John James had Audubon, Inland, another major award winner, and Slow Fire. In all four books, Pam is a careful and informed explorer and namer of the natural world. All books are emotionally complex, linguistically and wittily inventive. All are filled with stunning imagery, both descriptive and metaphorical, and the kind of wordplay I call word work. But it's increasingly difficult to read them without, as I said of Slow Fire, quote, being jolted from easy assumptions about the centrality of human beings on our threatened planet. The chapbook we're celebrating tonight, which won the 2024 Chad Walsh Award, reverses that territory, putting human emotion at the center of a still carefully depicted natural world. Here is what Kevin Proofer, again, wrote of Left. Alexander creates characters that seem alive in their contradictions. Like a memoir distilled into poetry, this book is alive, frightening, and humane, suggesting, as always, how little we might know of each other's inner lives. This is one of the best poetry collections I have read in years. Pamela Alexander now lives in Maine. Please welcome her back to Cambridge.
Sorry, it's- How's this? It's good. Well, I can throw out my notes where I was going to say that those of you who know my work know I write about nature and not about well, autobiographical glimpses, yes, but I did write an entire autobiography, but it was removed by several centuries and by gender from me. It was Commonwealth of Wings that Martha mentioned. So this is really different. Left, it is the story of my marriage, and it is totally, really, truly autobiographical. I met and married Sylvester in Tucson, and that's where the place names in this first poem and many others come from. My husband lives here. In the wind that blows through Sabino Canyon, in the water that bolts down Mount Lemmon after an August storm, here in the empty chair beside me. On the pathways behind my cat's eyes, in her neural network, she has no map of time, no X to mark his position. She would not be surprised to see him. Tucson, 1998. This is the beginning of the story. daisies and blue-eyed grass. I wanted to be who he thought I was, not a woman afraid of her life, but the one he saw in the courtroom, his face reckless with love, when he gave her a kiss and a ring. Dazed, I held wildflowers, stood under the sign, defendant. Sylvester was born in Dublin and he emigrated to Canada at about age 30. And much later, he became a snowbird between Ottawa and Tucson. Family. His Dublin sister, 2 sons, 3 nieces, all called him himself. You could hear the capital. Startled, amused, annoyed by his wildness, past and present. Race car driving, madcap sales, cross-country ski patrol, carousing once with his buddies at 4 favorite bars before repairing to the hospital for his broken leg. You can't tell himself a thing, not at all. Takes after his mum, he does, whose shenanigans got her tossed out of 3 old folks' homes. Ay, dear, an outrage he is. A high point. Also in the desert outside Tucson. Booted, day packed, hatted, we switched back up toward Blackett's, rested at the saddle, tackled the last rise, crested, walked the thinning ridge past the end of trail sign, nestled among the rocks to make coffee, break chocolate. Ravens rode the updrafts for a look at us, humans unreasonably high. Don't worry, everybody goes past the end of trail sign. The end of trail is well worn. It's the closest to hang gliding I will ever get. Transport. Hoodoos are those usually tall kind of stone columns that the wind creates. Night desert, bright earth, sharpness, stars like needles, barrel cactus bristling with fishhooks. Tick of the cosmos close to audible. We left thorn scrub and hoodoos, the lucid air that floats us all, drove northeast every January for my spring term teaching. He would not stay in Tucson, but oh, he must have missed his big friends, the mountains. Instead, Ohio's bean and cornfields, clouds and drizzle. Snowy owls drifted south from Ontario. He clouded, dimmed, invented Elm Hall, our home north or southwest. We'll get back to Elm Hall in a minute. This is in 2 short sections. It's called North. Emerald beetles set eggs in bark. Larvae bored inward to lace phloem with galleries that cut the upward flow of sap. 2. Instead of the desert, I missed my first home, New England, its mountains and ocean, my neighbors for 50 years. I didn't adapt, new Ohioan, new professor, chair even, sobbing in my basement office at midnight. I can't do this fucking job. I was what do you call it? Adjunct. That's the word, adjunct, at MIT for 13 years. Every spring, I'd find out if I had a job in the fall. That was fun. Early morning. Lazy, dangling from pink wings, they sailed in slow circles under the 10-foot ceilings. We bombed the nest on the porch, faculty housing said. Some crawled inside the walls. Nothing we can do. Not lazy, damaged, half poisoned, they staggered, bombed, bombing. We found them thrashing on windowsills, drowning in cups of coffee. Meanwhile, he was afraid of the stems of blueberries. He might choke. Afraid of other men. They might guess. Afraid of being alone. As I sat reading in bed, a wasp whacked against my sternum, dropped inside my nightgown, stung. The marriage bed. We had fallen. We were falling. Sylvester's voice appears in some of these poems. I think you'll hear it. How did he? Back in the desert, he said a distant white cloud the size of a quarter would darken and fling hail at us. How did he know? Pocket thunderstorm, he called it. You have to be ready. He took tablets for arthritis pain. If you swallow them whole, they're not addictive. No high, no risk. Carried them always like water, essential. How did he get them? A stash brought from Tucson? Or did he find a local doc? He had the car all day while I was teaching. In the kitchen, the bathroom, beside the bed, shirt pocket, pants pocket, pink or green or white, like mints. Play. I was Rocky Raccoon, one tough dude who could swagger even lying down, and Miss Mouse, and a seal who did tricks. We invented other mice, dozens, and Sylvester, of course, the cat, tossed them back, Mabel, Fred, like popcorn. I was foxes and otters. He growled he was gladly the cross-eyed bear, the old church joke. That dump of a house on Elm Street, faculty housing, gave its name to our new relations in a home for difficult girls. Hard play. That is how Elm Hall began, how I became headmistress Miss Hardwick and Sylvester Sylvia. In a dress and apron. Yes, Mum. Punished for chores done badly, whimpering. Afterward, the crafty smile. Didn't hurt a bit. Next time, harder. We carried ham radios on our hikes. This is called Only Light. Friends had advised against him, but I was lost. Pussycat, we called each other. Radio cats prowling the desert, talkies on our belts, calling voices down the sky. Then lace under his shirt, silk under his shorts. We met men in makeup. He was someone else, and he frightened me by wanting to be whipped, frightened me back to the place of not talking. He was smart and funny and knew science and poetry and 4 languages, but not one that could find me. And that is how we lost each other. The body love once wore had gone, leaving behind only light and a wound. Yes, after being an adjunct, my new job in Ohio was, of course, more demanding. There's some water here. Chairwoman. Losing, forgetting. Late, lot full, parking tickets. Did I say no outdoors? Outdoors here? No mountains, hills, refuge. Quick, home for the office keys. No, have them back again. Stricken, unaware how not finishing, missing, how needy, sleeping to, shouting at him, I can't do, say distracted. Did I? It was worse than that. On his back. When I got home from work, on the kitchen floor again, talking gibberish to the ceiling. This time I didn't follow the ambulance, didn't wait all night in the emergency room. Sometimes he just didn't get things right. The elms. Not our elm hall. We'd moved from its reign of wasps and flaking paint. The Elms was a rehab place I found after the ER discharge papers said drug abuse in letters half a page high. One doc said her terminal cancer patients weren't on that much OxyContin. Sometimes he thought he was a terminal cancer patient, or I was, watching a clumsy nurse draw my blood routine. He sobbed and called my friends. Come now if you want to see her alive. The Elms moved him to another room. No monitors or IV, an ordinary bed. I'm back, he said, and waited. Months of dinners with retired farmers, farmers' wives. What did they make of himself? His growly Irish voice, his puns and science, his silence. I'm here, he said, but the 8 miles from college to the Elms was more than road. He found it, blue cover with maple leaves, motto, desiring a better country. I want to go back to Canada. I don't think current Canadian passports have that motto, but his did back then. Mary was Sylvester's middle name, given to him by a very Catholic mother who said he was a sickly child and he wasn't expected to live. So she wanted to give him an edge in next life. Mary on vacation. Months of electrolysis, shiny bags of makeup, earrings. Miss Hardwick had long since fired herself, didn't feel she could complain. People should be themselves, right? But I missed the blade-thin pussycat who sang love songs in Irish and German as he led me through the desert. Now he wore wigs and falsies, filmy blouses, flew to Tucson as Mary, lost his ticket, met a woman who took him in for the night. Tea, chat, passed. What a coup. What I didn't. When my brother called to invite me for Christmas, my brother, 9 years older, accomplished naval captain, math PhD, whom I idealized. I didn't say Sylvester too, and went and meant to, spent a week, hectic, brother, sister, nephews, and meant to every day. Of course I would, and didn't call. Sylvester's Irish accent was so strong that a friend of mine who went to Dublin every summer said, this was in the early 2000s, he said, you don't hear accents like that anymore. By his own hand. Where are they, his hands that looked like my mother's, the wide ears he called cooling fins, his big feet, beat up hiking boots, one over the other, bashful beside the bed? Where are the songs he sang to me in the desert, the long growl he made of birds to laugh at my binoculars and field guide? I didn't think I loved him very much. I was wrong. Didn't think I loved him enough. I was right. I'm going to read 3 more poems, 2 more poems, 1 more poem. Did a little revising, yeah. So caliche is the, it's like concrete. You cannot dent it. And it's a common substrate of the soil in desert environments. This is called vertigo. The desert is deeper than I thought, deeper than thought, that trickster, bait and switcher, rabbit snare. Thought says I did what I couldn't do otherwise. Coyotes send cryptic messages through the cooling night. Swallows hold up stars like candelabra. My thoughts slip against each other hard, geological faulting. Beneath sand and caliche, slow plates, miles of dark rock, percolating water and fire. That sounds like the end, but actually there's a lot more that happens. That's all for tonight.
My meeting with Angie Estes moves back to Pam Alexander. Shortly after Pam and I arrived in Oberlin and Angie, and shortly after that, she came to campus for a reading. A few years later, her second book, Voiceover, won Oberlin's Field Poetry Prize, for which I was honored, though not burdened, to serve as editor. Oberlin subsequently published 4 more of Angie's books, and for several semesters, she taught creative writing at Oberlin. Prizes came in. The Alice Faye de Castagnolo Award for Voiceover, the Kingsley Tufts Poetry Prize, and the Audre Lorde Prize for Lesbian Poets for Enchanté, and Trist was one of 2 finalists for the Pulitzer Prize. Her numerous other awards include fellowships from the Guggenheim Foundation and the Lannan Foundation, and a collection of essays devoted exclusively to her work was published in 2019. Praise came in. About one of those books, Stephanie Burt said, quote, Angie Estes has created some of the most beautiful verbal objects on the planet. The praise continues for her 7th book, Last Day on Earth in the Eternal City, published just last month by Unbound Edition, which will also bring out her selected poems in 2026, I think. What makes these poems such beautiful verbal objects? The complex syntax, which will carry a complex sentence all the way through a 2-page poem. The magnificent multilingual wordplay. The stuff of the poems, for which imagery is too tame a word. And maybe most of all, the magic that allows her to move through multiple languages, countries, civilizations, centuries, and complex emotional territory, from childhood memories to the passions of adulthood. And what is this magic? Here is Kevin Puffer for one last time. Reading a poem by Angie Estes is like listening in on the intricate turnings and realizations of a brilliant mind, a mind that follows one path only to discover another, more surprising one, and a mind that observes with an acuteness and intelligence I can only envy. Please welcome Angie Estes from Illinois and from next door, where she has just read for the launch of Stephanie Berg's anthology, Super K-Pop. So.
Okay, you are closer.
No closer.
Can you hear? Can you hear me? Yeah.
But, thank you for that extremely generous introduction, and thank you for all that you do again and again and again to make this whole series what it is. And James, thank you for continuing to do these amazing, amazing readings. How are we doing on time? We okay? Okay. Closer to the mic.
Yeah.
This better? Okay. The swallows come out like stars, wallowing in the dim evening light. Because in the country of blue, at times, even the borders of the heart are the borders one needs to leave. So I waited at the airport, a woman beneath a sign that said, Gate B, hold. What Eloise and Abelard must have been feeling when they named their son Astrolabe, an instrument for determining one's position in the universe. The room where they met in secret was not far from Pont Neuf, the new bridge, which is the oldest bridge in Paris. And like the French grammatical liaison, it puts something hard, something voiced between two vowels, like the sound you make when I am finally inside you. It's the way scientists knew they had discovered a new group of blue whales. They were singing a song no one had ever heard. Is there water here for you? There's a vous in this poem, V-O-U-S, which is of course French for you, but it's the formal you for the one that you'd use as a sign of respect. The present was tense. The past was here. The air so warm and waft, you could toss it around your neck like a scarf. Like the lambs from the island of Ouessant off the coast of Brest. Pré Salé, salt meadow, fed on sea-salted grass so that their flesh becomes tender while their hearts are still pumping. According to the Talmud, it is better to wish you had never been born than to think of what's above, what's below, what's behind, what's ahead. But still, on the hills above Utsuki, on the coast of northern Japan, with an old-fashioned black telephone connected to nothing, nowhere, the living make phone calls to the dead, just as God himself, when he's alone, sits way up in the top corner, bird's nest seats of the Opéra Garnier in Paris, from where he sees the stage only if he stands and leans to the side and sings, "Vumi," with that voodoo that you do so well. This poem makes reference to a shopping list that Galileo made when he was living in Padua and was going over to Venice. Privilege for the vocabulary. Among random entries scattered on Galileo's shopping list for making a telescope, something specific, but not relevant for the instrument, and by no means something you could shop for, like Tosca's dress, which you're redesigning for a more voluptuous soprano, just as you let out the seams of this poem. Oh, reason not the need, and I know not seems, but still one wants to know what kind of thing this thing is. Turns out it's not a song by Cole Porter, but a reminder to obtain the authorization to publish the first dictionary, Vocabulario, of the Italian language, a privilegio attached to the list as if it were a ledge to hold on to or jump off of, as if just the right word, le mot juste, could split open the heavens, the way you open beneath me and speak rapid Russian phrases that I, a woman stitched to earth in one worn language, will never know the meaning of. You had me at Premier Cru. You had me on the hillside of Clos de la Croix de Pierre in Burgundy, even though we have never been there. You had me contemplating the riddles of birds, what looks open and invites you in, but is something you can never enter. You even had me laughing at the jokes birds make, like the one about the northern flicker that believes the cup tattooed on his chest is half full, when it's really half empty. You had me at Andrei Rublev's grave, which no one can find, although the bells keep ringing anyway. Sitting next to you on the bed before you left, you had me sitting before the road, and you had me inside you, leaving Venice, chanting with the novices in the monastery of Grande Chartreuse, Tu m'as séduit, ô Seigneur, et moi, je me suis laissé séduire. O Lord, you have seduced me, and I let myself be seduced. This poem is actually bookended with two books. The opening lines are from Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. And the poem ends with Huck Finn's final lines from Mark Twain's novel. Yours truly. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Every book I had ever read came back to read me, along with the 474,500 migrating birds that, according to Birdcast, have crossed over Champaign County, flying south so far tonight. American redstarts, Swainson's thrushes, gray catbirds, white-crowned sparrows, rose-breasted grosbeaks. Even now, 325,500 birds are in flight at an altitude of 1,700 feet and a speed of 27 miles per hour. While across the Atlantic at Paris Fashion Week, two men waving canisters of Fabricant's liquid fiber circle and spray a dress onto an almost naked model. When the white downy sheath is complete, another woman steps forward and shapes shoulder straps with her hands, sliding them off the shoulders before cutting a slit up one leg from floor to thigh. Still, so many questions. Will I love you forever or leave you forever? And will forever be long enough to do both? Like Huck, I reckon I got to light out for the territory, out where you knew the way to my house, the way a blood clot knows the way to a heart. This is a one sentence poem, and as I'm sure you know, poems do this sort of thing. When I was thinking about reading it, I suddenly remembered something that I haven't thought about for maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 or 40 years, however it was. I think it was like a freshman in college, and I signed up for this philosophy of religion course. And on the first day, the professor said that the course basically was all going to be on the arguments for the existence of God. And that was like, no one thought anything about that. And then he said, and that all the exams, the in-class exams, would be a question, and you would have to answer the question in one grammatically correct sentence. We weren't worried about the existence of God. We were always like, what's a grammatically correct sentence? So anyway, it's one sentence. And a few, maybe a quarter of the way into the poem, there's a long pause. It's a colon. Solstice. Towards the end of her life, my mother kept saying, I'm going to be here as long as I'm supposed to be, as long as the days of June, and as long as Proust said a sentence needs to be, because it contains a complete thought. And no matter how complex it may be, the thought should remain intact, because the shape of the sentence is the shape of thought. Think how long the hummingbird feeds, as long as it needs to, dipping its tongue to make the nectar tremble, although not nearly as long as I stayed behind the Baptist church beneath honeysuckle when I was 10, pulling each flower's pistil back through its throat to drip one sweet bead onto my tongue before my parents drove us up into the mountains for the all-day meeting and supper on the ground, which always seemed to me more like all-day supper with cakes and pies laid out, waiting end to end on picnic tables, watermelons soaking in their galvanized tubs of ice, while the grills kept burning until even after evening prayer, everyone still had mustard on their folded hands and faces. The night so dark that all the fireflies were one giant sparkler held up to tick away the night in their hide and seek. Here I am, over there, here, now here, as if the shorter the days become, the longer the sentence needs to be. And then I think I'll just read a new poem. The title of the poem is I Remember, and it's of course after Georges Perec's Je me souviens. I remember. I remember Rome, remember lying with Bernini's Beata Ludovica Albertoni on her stone mattress in San Francesco Arepa, her finger pressed to her nipple all night. I asked the priest if I could see the stone St. Francis used for a pillow when he slept there. So he led me through many narrow corridors, doors he unlocked, and then asked if I was a member of the faith. I remember when I was 12, the first time I was kissed on the lips. She was 29, had 5 young children, and was married to the Baptist preacher. I remember singing the hymn, I come to the garden alone. It's 3/4 time, so that I always remembered the words of the chorus as he talks with me and he waltzes with me. I remember how Cicero wrote that if you want to remember, to find your way back, you must imagine interior space and then place things you want to recall as if they were objects in a room or house. You said that the anticipation of spring is better than spring. I was trying to decide whether the room should be lilac or a light shade of mauve. And then you said, why don't you go inside? I remember the ovaries of Eve, which once were believed to contain in miniature all future generations of humans that would ever be born. I remember, y'all come back now and don't wait too long. I might not be here. And I cannot forget the snow, still on the coal box on the morning I was born, which the neighbors said was the way they knew my mother had gone to the hospital. The black chunks snug in their seats, like my eyes before the lid of the world lifted. Thanks so much.
Thank you for the beautiful reading tonight. Let's give all the poets another round of applause. Thank you all for attending. Thank you all for tuning in. We have some books for sale over here. Poets will be signing books. Before we do that, though, if everyone could please move your chairs up against one of the walls, I'd be very grateful. Thank you so much.
Should we take a photograph? Let's do it. That was beautiful. How did the reading next door go?
It was quick. It was okay. It was definitely great.
Yeah.
It's wonderful to work with, so.
You could hear her a little bit. I need to talk to the other people because they have speakers right up against the walls here.
And you hear them very
You listen during readings.
Hey, Jared?
Oh, you didn't notice. That's great.
Yeah, no, I did.
Very persistent.
Yeah.
I want to buy Pam's book, and Angie's book, and can you? Maybe you should use my credit card for taxes.
Okay.
Well,
No, we don't need.
and you, my books, maybe just put 6. I don't know.
As many as you brought, we'll take for sure.
Well,
If that's okay with you.
I've got a,
What I think is right.
yeah, there's, yeah, and I have another, I have to.
Most add these to the consignment.
What?
We'll add this to our consignment agreement.
Mark, yeah, let me see, because she already said stuff I was gonna say. So then I.
Okay, we might be taking a photo. Looking at it, actually. This is my intern.
Where do you live? Where do you live?
Hi, how are you?
What else you got?
I'm super excited. Yeah.
But I'm hoping just like you can